with us. President Biden has endorsed his deputy, Kamala Harris, to be the presidential candidate for the Democratic Party in the November presidential election. This followed his exit from the presidential race after he announced on X that it was for the best interest of his party and the country. Vice-President Kamala Harris has, however, accepted the nomination and assured that she will earn and win the party's nomination. She also said she is, quote, honored to receive President Joe Biden's endorsement and promised to, quote, do everything in her power to unite the Democratic Party, end quote. Does Kamala Harris have what it takes to defeat the Republican candidate Donald Trump? Joining us via Zoom from Belgium is Global Affairs Analyst Nweke. Collins, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Veronica, for having me.
Well, some have termed what Joe Biden did as a historic first, but then we recall that sometime in 1968, President Johnson also decided to, step aside and nominated someone else. But from your perspective, did you see this coming? Did you see that Joe Biden will perhaps step aside and endorse his vice, Kamala Harris?
It was a bit of wait and see. President Biden's initial posture was that of doubling up on the fact that, he was elected to be the official nominee of the Democratic Party by well over 14 million Americans who are Democrats and independents. And so he felt that, yes, he had a bad performance at the debates, but then, like he always says, when you are hit and you fall, you get up, dust yourself up, and, put up a fight again. So he had fought very hard, and there was every indication that he wanted to stay in the race. But I think at some point it became inevitable that he had to, make way for two reasons. Number one, preserving his legacy, which is a very, very, excellent one. But also out of, patriotism for his country, but also for the Democratic Party, because the negative reporting wasn't doing him any good at all. And so he saw his numbers actually plummeting, and so it became unsustainable for him to stay in the race. And so finally, he did what he had to do, which was stepping down and endorsing his Vice President Kamala Harris to take his place.
Well, the sky does not really seem to be clear for Kamala, even from within the party, as much as she has been gathering some donors, especially those who supported the president, Joe Biden, at that moment. There are still, speculations about the possibility of other candidates like Senator Joe Manchin and also, the governor of California. How strong of a candidate is she against Donald Trump?
A vice president has a completely different status from a candidate president. As vice president, she had been loyal, but also very, very strong and very, very supportive of Biden. And so one could say that the credentials needed to be president were ever present in Kamala Harris, and that the choice of Biden was actually not a surprise. Yes, indeed, she acknowledged the uphill task ahead of her. Don't forget, like you were prefaced, Veronica, she did mention in her first statement that she has to end the nomination. And so in the hours and days after her nomination, she's been working assiduously hard to end the nomination. And what has happened so far is that even Milton that, you mentioned has actually endorsed her. So she is now very beautifully narrowing the play field such that both Newton, the governor of California, and other very, very strong potential contenders are lining up, very solidly behind her. Is it going to be a coronation rather than a contest? That remains to be seen. But every signs are there that the most, serious contenders, those who will contest against her, are actually supporting her. And so, yes, she's standing pretty strong at this point.
Well, there are those who perhaps might disagree with you because they look at what happened in 2016, saying that what is her strength? If Hillary couldn't get the ticket or win the election, can Kamala Harris win the election? How popular is she with the Americans? Some of them, it's a mixed bag for her right now, even as it is, because even former President Barack Obama hasn't stated clearly his support for her. He's looking at the convention in August at the end of the day. So what do you say to all of this?
Well, at this stage, we are actually looking at her clinching the ticket. She is not, the presidential candidate, at least not officially. Yes, of course. The core question one should ask oneself is actually whether Americans are ready for, a female president. We saw what happened in, Hillary Clinton, like you referenced, and then the added twist to Kamala Harris is there's a fact that she is also, a Black Asian American. So which means that if she probably even has more hurdles to scale than, Hillary Clinton of 2016. But Veronica, we're looking at nearly a decade away. And what that means is that, Americans have also grown in the sense that they may have outgrown, that prejudice against, a woman and a Black woman, for that matter, becoming the president of America. Many people said never, it's not going to happen when Barack Obama showed up to be the president. So the next 3 months will be very much determinant on how she is going to perform as a presidential candidate if she gets the nomination, which is very, very likely. No, I don't think it will be wise to write her off at this point. I do believe that, she has a very, very strong chance of becoming the next president of the United States of America. But she is up against a very, very strong candidate who has defied all odds. And I'm talking of Donald Trump. So it's not going to be a walk on the park for her, but she has a very, very fair chance.
And, like you said, Americans may have gone beyond the prejudice of, saying they do not want a Black leader. But then she has been criticized for being sort of laid back and not having as much vision. Time is not on the side of the Democrats at this point. They have just 4 months to the November polls. How likely is it for her to clinch the ticket? And what's the possibility of having probably a selection or a primary at this time?
Well, those who point to her possible laid-back attitude are definitely going to be confronted with her records by herself of being a prosecutor in California in those days. That was actually how she made her name for a start. While she was busy prosecuting crime, Donald Trump was busy himself committing crimes. So that's a very, very important parallel that I believe she will be drawing, in the coming weeks, in the coming months, so that at the end of the day, people will see in her a very, very strong woman, a very strong candidate, one that is actually a history-making, individual, and who has all that it takes to actually lead America. But don't forget, she is also 20 years younger than Donald Trump. And so age, which has been an issue here, annoyingly for some of us who actually want to discard everything around ageism, actually do feel that comparison is also a very, very significant one. So Kamala Harris cannot actually be written off. She has quite a bit of a downside, but her strength is actually not in question here, and I'm sure she'll be working hard with her campaign team to play those up and sell herself well to the American people.
Well, the Republican presidential candidate, Donald Trump, is saying that she will be easier to defeat in November. That's what he has said, and I'm wondering what you make of what he said. And aside that, there are those who are concerned about her policies because it seems more Americans are now more politically aware with what is going on, and the support or not of the position, rather, of the U.S. with regards to the war in Gaza and the war in Ukraine. Majority of them are drawing inferences from that to make their decision. How would that also impact this election at the end of the day, especially for Kamala Harris?
Well, you have a very strong point there, Veronica, because let's recall that Kamala Harris was a candidate to become president. She contested for the nomination against Joe Biden. Her campaign for nomination at the time was very, very weak, not so very well professionally organized. And so the Republicans indeed, had that fact to point to let people know that she is not fit for purpose. She's not ready yet to be, the president of the United States, and they doubt if she will ever be ready because she hasn't got the capacity. Now, on her own part, she has quite, an array of, legislative achievements to her side as a senator before, she contested to be the nominee. But even before then, as a prosecutor that made very, very fundamental, cases in California at the time. So while, like I said previously, there are some critical downside to her candidacy, there are also quite a lot of, strengths. Now, I think the battle is how she will be able to play up those strengths against her weaknesses such that the strength will actually dwarf the, the weaknesses and then convince the American people.
Mm. And you will notice that the withdrawal of donors from Joe Biden's campaign and also his performance at the debate sort of led to a level of division within the Democrats, and that's why they were asking him, to step down for another person to clinch the ticket. How can the Democrats, take advantage of this late-stage problem to win the polls in November?
In your intro, Veronica, you drew reference or attention to, the critical elements of Kamala Harris's acceptance statement, to be the nominee. One of the things that she mentioned, and, nothing is left to chance here. Every word that people at that level speak, are very, very well weighed. Now, the second critical point that you mentioned, next to, gaining the trust of the people and then effectively becoming the candidate, is that she has some work to do to unite the Democrats, and she has already started doing that. Now, in the first days, after Biden endorsed her, she has been able to narrow the field such that those who would have, contested against her are actually lining up against her. So I think she's going to be that uniting figure that brings back peace and cohesion within the Democrats. And don't forget that characteristically, Democrats are a lot more amenable to actually keeping and sustaining peace within their party. Some of those contestants who, potential contestants who have now, endorsed her, they are not doing that because they don't want to be president. Most of them are doing that either because they feel that it is in the best interest of their party, and so they are keeping their own personal interests away. So those are the sort of sentiments that I believe she will be, looking out for and actually expressing them to be able to unite, her party behind her. Now, what do you expect the Republicans to say about her candidates? They are not going to tell you that, she's going to be hard to beat, no. But there are signs that Republicans are very, very worried because all their strategy were actually channeled towards, Joe Biden. Right now, they would have to actually re-strategize to begin to, take Kamala into consideration. And that's not easy.
Interesting times ahead, but we must thank you, Global Affairs Analyst Collins Nweke, who joined us from Belgium, for your time on the program. Thank you.
My pleasure, Veronica. Thank you.
Right. And finally, we went to the streets to ask Nigerians this question. If you were to pick between